Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, October 11th. I'm Gary Stevens. It is the second Monday of the month, which means we catch up with what is going on in Lansing with one of the persons who represent Allegan and Ottawa counties in the State House. And we're talking about State House Representative, third-term Republican Mary Whiteford of Casco Township, who serves most of Allegan County in her district. She's on the other end of our Zoom connection this morning. Mary, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, everybody.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question about what's going on in Lansing, Mary Whiteford will be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. Before we talk politics and before we talk about some of the things going on in Lansing, there are two aspects of it's medical and pretty much up your line that I do want to touch upon. First of all, last Thursday, we had Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker, along with the prosecuting attorney for Allegan County, Myrene Cook, join us. And the reason that Sheriff Baker wanted Myrene to join us was because of the efforts to try to work with people who are involved in domestic violence, being this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And although it's not a major topic that you have addressed in the past with us, Mary Whiteford, still domestic violence is something that state lawmakers are definitely working on to try to give the tools necessary to help those who are victims and help those who are perpetrators get the help that they need.
Yes. So one thing that I have been working on, which ties right into this, is the fact that many families have their children taken away because of neglect, abuse, and a lot of that has to do with the domestic violence as well. So it is really important. So I always try to picture, because, you know, I used to do home visits as a pediatric nurse. I've been really in close contact with a lot of CPS workers, so Child and Protective Services. What happens in a family that causes a spouse to become violent? What kind of triggers are going on? What kind of tools did they grow up lacking to help moderate themselves and make better decisions? And how can we help? I mean, a lot of that is coaching. A lot of that is substance use disorder. This has been a very stressful time for people. It could be that final straw. So what are we doing? And I think the biggest thing, and it's so good that Sheriff Baker and Prosecutor Cook was on with you, is if there is a cry for help, is that we do our very best to get in there and support that family and isolate the violence that's happening and give people better tools, but make sure that the victim of domestic violence has a safe place to go and a safe place where they can talk about the challenges that they're facing, and to make sure those kiddos back at home, that when they come to school and a teacher or a social worker or a secretary sees that that child is having some kind of struggle, to figure out a way, hey, you might need to go talk to one of our social workers, and make sure that we've got that mental health support for kiddos there too. So just big picture thing. I think it's important that we're all talking about this and what stress leads to these triggers that leads to violence, and how do we circumvent that or catch it early.
The other aspect of what the month of October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we've had some people discussing that during this month as well. And at least well, I don't want to say at least, but in this particular avenue, we are seeing some great strides being made for the awareness, and also hopefully being able to address breast cancer and maybe try to find a way to beat this scourge.
Yeah. So it was about 14 years ago. Within 2 days, my mom and my sister-in-law, so my mom at the time was 63, my sister-in-law was 40, when they were both diagnosed with breast cancer. They both found it by self-examination. So it's really important, ladies, and people who love women, just do that self-examination, use a little soapy water and check, because you're the best person to be able to save your life, but then do something about it Now, my mom, she had just made it through my dad dying of cancer, and she was just couldn't deal with medical people. And she kept that a secret from me and my sisters. And it was a Christmas Eve gift to us when she said, guys, I found this lump and I'm going to go do my best if you will be with me and try to save myself. So that early intervention and noticing it is so crucial. And then be that warm hug around a woman who's going through that, and men too, because there's a risk for men to get breast cancer as well. Everybody should just, look for odd things that's happening in your bodies and talk to your personal care provider. I've got a PA, a physician assistant, who I adore. I feel like I can talk about anything to her, but your doctor or your nurse practitioner, but do something about it. But be very aware, and then let's support these people going through this very, very hard. I mean, I saw my mom have the worst side effects of every single treatment she got. I mean, it beat her down, but now she's this wonderful Mimi Joe. She's a great grandma. She's got 5 great grandkids, and she's the light of my life.
616-395-1450 if you have a question for State House Representative Mary Whiteford. Casco Township, just north of South Haven, but her district is most of Allegan County, except for some parts in Holland in the far northeast corner, which has Steve Johnson as its representative out of Wayland. And it leads me to my next point, which in this case, Mary will not be involved with, as she is term limited out of office at the end of 2022, and that is redistricting. The Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, Mary, is coming. They're seeking public input about how exactly will they draw up the districts. And the latest one, I wouldn't say latest from this group, but one that's being proposed by a progressive group that is behind the establishment of this commission, would see Allegan County sort of chopped up a little bit. And I think was marginalized to a certain extent by one person who had looked at it as one who serves this area and who could not be on this commission because of the rules that was passed in 2018 as to the makeup of this commission. Do you get a sense that in order to make things fair and equitable, Mary, that Allegan County especially is being, shall we say, parceled out in order to meet constitutional limits and constitutional standards?
Yeah, so I'm going to do my best to refrain from anything because the legislature is not involved in this at all. But Allegan County grew a lot. We went from about 102 to 120 some thousand people. So I knew there were going to be some changes. But the only thing that concerns me is there's not a single person on that commission from West Michigan. That's why it's really important for the people of Allegan County and Ottawa County, for that matter, all over West Michigan, which are 3 of the 4 fastest growing counties in the state. It's really important for people to get their comments in there. And there is a portal, michigan-mapping.org. So be sure and get your comments in there and make sure that people from West Michigan are heard about what's most important to you.
I know it's a kind of a tough situation for you to speak on because of your position right now. It just seems as if we might get a lot of people speaking. I just don't know how many people are going to be listening and how much influence other areas might put on. And somebody's got to be made to pay for all this. And I have a funny feeling we're going to be the ones paying for all this. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just my thoughts on this thing.
Yeah, I know from all different perspectives. There are people hiring attorneys to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. I've heard the really every redistricting ends up going to a court with judges. So just know that nothing's set in stone, but the more that you get your voice out and your perspective. Here's one perspective I always thought was interesting. So City of Holland has 2 congressmen, 2 state reps for the city itself, and then 2 senators, which gives the City of Holland a big voice. So that's a different perspective from when they talk about communities of interest. I'm like, if it was me, I'd rather have more voices in the legislature. But so that's something people should think about. how best should those lines be? And I can speak to that now. Like you said, I'm termed out, but I'm just going to let this process play out. But I do encourage everybody, go and just, I mean, squeaky wheel gets the grease. At least you got to try. I think there's a lot of people who really are trying to do a good job with this commission, and I pray so. But we'll see how everything plays out. Hopefully we know by the end of the year where all these lines are and see who's running for what, right?
Indeed, indeed. Mary, the state budget process is in the books for fiscal 2022. It was a document you, of course, were very much involved with in your position in the State House, and a document that apparently had the cooperative efforts of both the Whitmer administration and majority Republican representatives in the House and in the state Senate. However, there were some things in that document that got knocked out through the governor's either veto pen or by her office saying these measures are unenforceable. Her way of vetoing measures that, frankly, Mary, if she had the guts to put the veto pen to it, it probably would have been maybe more effective than just saying, oh, they're unenforceable and she won't be doing anything about it. Maybe I'm simplifying it a little bit too much, but it just seems as if, yeah, she got her little digs into.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I'll preface this to say, all of the major investments that I recommended and had in my budget bill for foster care and children who have been abused or neglected, all of those priorities made it to the final signing. So we've got the greatest investment in child welfare, probably in the history of Michigan, making sure that those kiddos have a champion and a forever family. And I also am really pleased. It was years in the making, but to develop a program for safe housing for survivors of human trafficking, which totally links up with foster kids as well. The average age for somebody being trafficked is 15 into sex trafficking. Why? Why would a child willingly go off to somebody who's not their family? And that would be a child in foster care who doesn't feel a connection to family or their church or their community, who they feel like some nice stranger is going to be better for them, and then they're exploited and then they don't go back to their family. So we've got a plan to have programs expanded and developed around the state for safe housing for someone who first comes out of the life of being trafficked. So those were major wins that I've worked really hard on. And another huge thing, I had EMTs come to me back in, I believe it was March or April, saying how they needed more money. And they said, hey, give us $10 million and we'll make sure EMTs across the state are going to be paid properly. I'm like, wait, it's more complicated than that. So I worked really hard on this, and I worked with my fiscal team to figure out how do we bring the rate of Medicaid reimbursement, because that was the crux of the issue. Medicaid is about 70% of all runs, to bring it up to what Medicare is reimbursed, almost double. And so that was a $14 million investment to do that. So I see repercussions going all the way down to the community level, so that our EMTs, our paramedics are all paid, so that they can, so that the reimbursement's better and people can get paid. So preface that to say those are my major wins that I really worked hard for the Holland area in West Michigan. But when we go into the different language, I've had thousands of people reach out to me saying, what can you do, Mary, that's going to help where parents have a voice for their children? I've talked about this before. My grandkids all had COVID and they had snotty, stinky noses for about a week. And that was their COVID. I understand that they can get other people sick because my grandson got my husband sick. But what's really important is that parents make that final decision about what's safe for their children. I believe the role of the health department truly is to deal on a case-by-case basis with salmonella or other illnesses at restaurants or illnesses that are going around. And I actually had so many people come to me because I'm like, if I have a bill that says health departments can't have these blanket rules on schools, that the governor's going to veto it. And they said, but Mary, at least try. At least put a bill out there so that we know that you're trying to give us a voice, which is a massive, so many more people reached out to me about that than anybody saying that they supported the school's decision or the health department's decision, I should say. So I talked to my chair. I'm like, at least let's put this language in there. I can go back home and say, I tried. I put it in language, and this is what happened. When it comes to, it's called boilerplate, but it's hundreds of pages of specific one-year statute in budget bills, and they have to tie to funding. So it ended up the governor can't veto that because it is tied to funding, but she said it was unenforceable. And what our communities decided upon their legal recommendations, not Ottawa County, but Allegan County, and I believe it's 5 counties across the state, decided to not take a chance and repeal that. It was really important for the parents that have been reaching out to me, especially the ones in Hamilton, Martin, Otsego, Allegan. They've reached out so much. They set up these groups. Everybody's riled up and they're showing up at school board meetings, and it's really hard. And I see these kids. I mean, my grandson sucks on his mask. How is he getting the proper oxygen when he's wearing this all day? And there's mucus in there and breath. I just think it's short-sighted that we're penalizing children in this way. I mean, if the school had a fresh mask every hour for these kids, that would be a little bit safer, but still, what's the role? Me as a grandparent, my kids go to private school. They didn't, in another county, they didn't have to wear masks at school. Nobody got sick. And even if there are outbreaks, let's talk about the fact, are the outbreaks serious COVID lungs, which is diffuse pneumonia? Or is it a snotty nose and a cold? So we have to get away from, I believe, we have to get away from making everybody afraid and addressing people who are sick and giving those treatments that they need. And we talked about this last month. People who have this COVID lung that the virus has sunk in and caused the body to fight itself, and that's what's killing people. Let's help those people. Let's get them every intervention possible. And help them to get better. So rant done. So that's kind of like the genesis and where we're at right now. And just the fact so many of my families have calmed down, and I'm not hearing terrible outbreaks going on. One person can't save everybody. And our nation was formed on liberty-loving individuals who fought England, right, to have their independence. People care about their independence and their liberties. That's why West Michigan, it's so important to have those gun rights, to have the ability to protect their family. And I think that's fundamentally what our nation is built upon.
Unfortunately, all these nice, juicy topics, Mary, come at the end of our conversation. We just won't have any time. And I apologize to all those who might be trying to call in. We'll have to just save those sentiments until next month. For more information, if you want to try to get a hold of Mary Whiteford, her office number is 517-373-0836. That's 517-373-0836. Mary Whiteford, State House Representative, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on WHTC's Talk of the Town, expressing some opinions and giving us some insight what's going on in Lansing. Wish you and your family well over the next month or so. And if all goes well, we'll do this again in November. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mary Whiteford, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.